Hello, and welcome to the Resource Nexus podcast. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into some philosophical ideas. First up, we'll explore the debate on a tighter rotation versus a larger rotation in basketball. I'll be sharing my thoughts from a previous article I wrote. Then, we'll shift gears and dive into a topic I've spent years thinking about and developing called the Moser Doctrine and the coaching ladder theory I published this week. You can find both pieces in print over at the resourcenexus.com, and I'll link them in the description of this pod as well. We've received some positive feedback, especially on the Moser Doctrine. If you're not familiar with it, it focuses on the career trajectories of coaches. Without further ado, let's get into the rotations first. Short bench versus long bench. That is the question. Back in the 1960s, star NBA players played as much as 48 minutes a game. One season, Wilt Chamberlain averaged an astonishing 48.5 minutes per game, thanks to overtimes, and he did this wearing Converse All-Stars with a higher pace of play and without modern travel, training, diet, or medicine. Even as late as 1973, Wilt was still playing 43.2 minutes a game at 36 years old as a 300-pound center. He played every game that season and rarely missed games throughout his career. While Wilt was a genetic freak, this kind of durability wasn't uncommon across the NBA. The NBA, today I acknowledge, today's NBA is different. The three-point shot and the space it creates have fundamentally altered the game. Defensive intensity is at an all-time high, and managing players' minutes does help preserve them for the long grind of a season. It keeps them healthy and ready for what really matters, the playoffs. When the game is on the line in the playoffs, rotations shrink across the board. Teams save their stars for these high-stakes moments where they might play 45 minutes in a do-or-die game. That's where the value lies, having your best players on the court when it matters most. It makes sense in the NBA. With 82 regular season games plus playoffs, a 24-second shot clock, and 48-minute games, sometimes played on back-to-back nights, resting players is a smart strategy. The key players are typically in their late 20s or early 30s, and they're multi-million-dollar assets teams need to protect for the long haul. College basketball. But college basketball is a different story. We're talking about 18 to 22-year-olds playing a slower-paced game with a 40-minute clock and a 30-second shot clock. They play around 35 games over a 5-month season, often with just 2 games a week during conference play. Playing a college player 35 minutes a game isn't burning the candle at both ends. These are young athletes who'd be in the gym anyway, working on their skills. They've been playing high-intensity basketball year-round through AAU, high school, and now college. And with NIL money in play, there's even less loyalty from players, with nearly 40% entering the transfer portal each offseason. If anything, coaches should be maximizing the talent they have now more than ever. Coach K's approach. My formative years were spent watching Duke and North Carolina in the early 1990s, during a stretch where Duke made 4 straight Final Fours and won back-to-back national titles with Christian Leitner. Leitner's senior season was part of one of the greatest college basketball teams ever assembled. That 1992 Duke team went 34-2, repeating as national champions and holding the number 1 ranking wire to wire. One thing that stood out about those Duke teams was how tight Coach K's rotations were. They prioritized chemistry, even if it meant sacrificing talent or depth. The players seemed to genuinely enjoy playing with each other, which fostered a team dynamic that was greater than the sum of its parts. It's a lesson in how valuable chemistry can be when you play your best players significant minutes. You don't want to end up relying on a walk-on as your 6th man or being one injury away from disaster, but Coach K showed how focusing on a tight rotation could maximize the talent on hand. Pitino's philosophy. At the same time, another coach was challenging these ideas, Rick Pitino. His 1995-96 Kentucky team, which won the national championship, embodied the opposite approach. Pitino's philosophy was to go deep into his bench, playing 10 players regularly. Consider this, the leading minutes per game player on that Kentucky team averaged only 27 minutes. They were loaded with talent, boasting 9 future NBA players, but to me, Patino's style highlighted the trade-offs. You can win with this approach if you have the talent, but it's less conducive to maximizing your potential. For instance, even if you have 9 NBA players, your ninth best player is still worse than your star. Why give someone like Wayne Turner or Allen Edwards 10 minutes of Tony Delk's potential playing time? Kentucky was simply so stacked that they could afford this trade-off and still win. Arkansas, 40 minutes of hell. Arkansas's 40 minutes of hell under Nolan Richardson was another example of a team embracing a deep rotation. They used a relentless pressing style to overwhelm opponents, and it worked. They won the 1994 national championship. What's interesting, though, is how their rotations tightened when the stakes were highest. By the NCAA tournament, and especially the title game, their stars were logging 30-plus minutes, with some playing 35 to 37 minutes. When it came to high-leverage situations, both Arkansas and Kentucky recognized that their best chance of winning was to rely on their top players. This raises the question, why not play like that all season? If your best lineup is clear, why not lean on it to dominate during the regular season? Arguments about players not holding up physically don't hold much weight. These were 20-year-olds playing 34 games over 5 months. Playing an extra 5 to 10 minutes twice a week wouldn't have been too much to handle. Today, not much has changed in the past 30 years regarding rotations. Some coaches stick with tight ones, while others opt for extended benches, limiting the minutes of their stars. However, recent examples from the last 2 national champions illustrate how impactful leaning on your best players can be. Take UConn's 2023 title run as an example. While Donovan Clingan was a fantastic bench piece, their top players like Adama Sanogo and Jordan Hawkins shouldered significant minutes in crucial moments. Similarly, Kansas in 2022 leaned heavily on their stars in high-leverage games. Still, there are frustrating examples of underutilization, like Zach Edey at Purdue. During his early years, Edey played just 19 minutes per game despite posting the highest PPR in college basketball history. His per-possession stats were identical to what he produced in his dominant 2023 National Player of the Year campaign. It's hard not to feel that college basketball was robbed of his full potential during that earlier stretch. With the current landscape of NIL and the transfer portal, it's even less likely that players with clear talent will stick around if they're underutilized. NIL era. The NIL era has added a new dimension to this conversation. With players now earning money, roster management and rotations take on a different weight. Some coaches have attempted to spread NIL money across the roster to maintain locker room harmony, much like they distribute minutes to keep everyone happy. However, from a competitive standpoint, this doesn't make much sense. Success is driven by stars, particularly your top 3 players. Ideally, NIL money should be heavily invested in those stars, just as their playing time should reflect their importance. Playing your stars 35 minutes a game and surrounding them with complementary role players fosters chemistry and maximizes talent. In today's environment of free transfer rules and NIL, it's increasingly unrealistic to keep everyone happy. Coaches who try to appease the entire roster through shared minutes or diluted NIL payouts are often setting themselves up for mediocrity. Lessons from Coach K's approach to rotations remains a blueprint for maximizing success. He wasn't concerned with keeping everyone happy or spreading opportunities evenly. His focus was on winning, and that meant giving his stars significant minutes and building chemistry among his core players. Even when players like Billy McCaffrey, who went on to become an All-American, transferred because of limited roles, it didn't derail Duke's success. Coach K managed his locker room and didn't sacrifice performance for the sake of appeasing players. Key elements of his strategy included riding through foul trouble instead of automatically sitting players, giving starters 30-plus minutes to establish rhythm and chemistry, trusting that focusing on your best players would lead to greater success. The debate over short versus long rotations ultimately comes down to a philosophical question. Do you prioritize spreading opportunity or maximizing talent? History, both recent and distant, shows that teams relying heavily on their stars generally have greater success. In the NBA, load management and extended benches have a place due to the grueling schedule and the financial investment in individual players. But even there, the playoffs reveal the truth. The best teams trust their stars to log heavy minutes when it matters most. In college basketball, with younger players, shorter seasons, and fewer games, the argument for a shorter bench is even stronger. Players in their prime physical years, with fewer physical demands compared to the NBA, are capable of handling extended minutes. The NIL era only further solidifies the case for short rotations, with free transfer rules and NIL deals reshaping roster dynamics, maximizing your best players' minutes and resources makes more sense than ever. Attempting to balance minutes and appease a full roster of players risks both chemistry and competitiveness. Coaches like Coach K showed that riding your stars and building chemistry among a tight rotation is a proven formula for success. And while exceptions exist, such as talent-rich teams like 1996 Kentucky or Arkansas's 40 Minutes of Hell, even those teams leaned on their best players when it mattered most. For teams aiming to maximize their potential, the lesson is clear: play your stars, build chemistry, and trust that quality beats quantity every time. Okay, now let's switch gears and get into the Moser Doctrine. The paradox of career trajectories, introducing the Moser Doctrine and the coaching ladder theory. Abstract. This study introduces two novel frameworks, the Moser Doctrine and the coaching ladder theory, to elucidate the patterns of ascension, descent, and rebound within the coaching profession. These theoretical frameworks provide insights into the systemic barriers and opportunities influencing the careers of coaches dismissed for performance reasons and their subsequent mobility. It also examines how coaches ascend, fall, and rebound within the coaching hierarchy, highlighting the impact of career decisions, performance outcomes, and systemic dynamics. Additionally, the ceiling effect theory examines the significant challenges faced by coaches fired for performance-related reasons in returning to high-level coaching positions. Introduction. Career trajectories in collegiate basketball coaching are marked by distinct patterns of advancement and usually setbacks. These dynamics of career trajectories of collegiate basketball coaches often mirror hierarchical mobility observed in corporate or religious institutions, where individuals ascend to prestigious positions or descend to lesser roles following performance-based outcomes. While success can pave the way for upward mobility, failures, particularly those linked to performance, may impose lasting barriers. This study introduces two new theoretical frameworks, the Moser Doctrine and the coaching ladder theory. These frameworks, alongside the ceiling effect theory, offer novel insights into the systemic factors governing coaching mobility. Methods. This study utilizes a qualitative analysis of historical coaching data, case studies, and anecdotal evidence from collegiate basketball coaching careers. Specific cases, including those of Porter Moser, Jim Herrick, and Rick Pitino, were examined to identify trends and test the validity of the proposed frameworks. Public perception was also reviewed to contextualize findings. The Moser Doctrine. The Moser Doctrine posits that no coach fired for poor performance at any level, even within a Power 5 P5 program, has successfully returned to a P5 position without achieving extraordinary success at the mid-major level their subsequent job was at. Porter Moser serves as the sole exception, ascending from a mid-major program, Loyola Chicago, after being fired, Illinois State, to a P5 role at Oklahoma after achieving a Final Four and subsequent Sweet 16 at Loyola. Key observations. Coaches such as Rick Pitino and Jim Herrick, while achieving returns to high-level positions, were not fired for performance-related reasons, but for violations or off-the-court issues, making their trajectories exceptions. Most coaches we found that did make a return also had similar issues. Extenuating circumstances such as Dino Gaudio's interim position at Wake Forest following Skip Prosser's death highlight the rare deviations from this trend and are what we deem special, or unique circumstances. The coaching ladder theory. The coaching ladder theory explains how coaches' career trajectories are influenced by prior success and systemic dynamics, including reputation and professional networks. Coaches who achieve success at a given level often retain access to equivalent opportunities even after experiencing setbacks such as firings. Key principles: climbing high safeguards the fall. Success at a mid-major or PKI 5 level provides a safety net. For example, Steve Prohm returned to Murray State after his tenure at Iowa State. Tom Crean moved from Indiana, a high-level P5, to Georgia, a low-level P5, staying within the P5 echelon. Staying too long raises the bar. Prolonged tenures at a single institution raise expectations, making even minor setbacks appear significant with lost perspective. It's detrimental in the long run for a coach to maintain. Bobby Lutz's firing at Charlotte exemplifies this dynamic. Coaches dismissed for poor performance, including at mid-major programs, rarely ascend beyond their initial success level. From every example we found, no coach who was fired later received a better job than the one they were fired from, other than Moser. The Lutz phenomenon. Coaches who remain stagnant risk diminished opportunities upon dismissal. Jeff LeBeau's trajectory highlights the advantage of consistent upward mobility compared to Bobby Lutz, whose career stalled after firing. Both were candidates for the ECU job after their firings from Auburn and Charlotte. LeBeau got the job despite a much less impressive resume. We theorize that being fired at a higher level is deemed better and safeguards a career, insulating success at a lower level, which LeBeau had, for example. The ceiling effect theory. This theory posits that coaches dismissed for poor performance face significant barriers to re-entry at the P5 level or any similar caliber job. Historical data suggests a hard ceiling for such individuals, as public perception and institutional risk aversion often outweigh reputation rebuilding efforts. Key observations: perception of justified, firings, dismissals, linked to performance failures create a stigma that hampers future opportunities. Reputation rebuilding. Even when coaches succeed at lower levels, their prior failures often deter P5 athletic directors from considering them for high-profile positions. They likely have options without the baggage. Systemic shifts, emerging trends such as NIL dynamics and increased TV revenue may create new pathways for mobility, but remain largely untested to this point. Notable cases testing this theory in the future will include Bryce Drew, Grand Canyon, and Richard Pitino, New Mexico, and possibly Anthony Grant, whose trajectories could challenge historical trends. In discussion, the Moser Doctrine and coaching ladder theory underscore the importance of timing, performance, and decision-making in shaping coaching careers. The ceiling effect theory highlights the enduring impact of failure in a highly scrutinized field, where public perception and institutional priorities heavily influence opportunities. For example, keeping ADs from hiring and then having to sell coaches who were fired. Future trends, including the rise of NIL, conference realignments, and shifting perceptions of program prestige, may disrupt historical patterns. While these frameworks provide a foundation for understanding coaching mobility, ongoing analysis will be essential to account for these emerging variables. For one, the money disparity is much greater than 10 years ago with NIL and all the TV money funneled to programs. We theorize that in the past, coaches who were fired were more hesitant to pursue Power 5, P5 jobs again, even after rebuilding their careers at a mid-major level. Even if a P5 opportunity arose, it was often at a lower-tier program, such as Penn State, which made leaving a successful mid-major position less appealing. Many coaches were likely deterred by the experience of being fired and, given the time required for career rehabilitation, were older by the time they had the chance to climb back up. Rebuilding a career often seemed too risky to justify making another ascent. However, for younger coaches like Bryce Drew and Richard Pitino, the current landscape, with increased money and resources available in P5 programs, may offer more compelling incentives to take that leap. Conclusion. Coaching careers in collegiate basketball are governed by complex dynamics where success facilitates upward mobility and failure imposes significant barriers. The Moser Doctrine, coaching ladder theory, and ceiling effect theory offer valuable insights into these patterns. For aspiring and current coaches, the implications are clear. Capitalize on upward opportunities, remain mindful of systemic limitations, and adapt to the evolving landscape of collegiate athletics. References historical case studies and coaching records from NCAA archives, literature on public perception and career mobility in athletics, comparative analysis of coaching trajectories across collegiate basketball programs. And that's a wrap for today's episode of the Resource Nexus podcast. Thanks for tuning in and diving into the world of basketball rotations and coaching theories with me. Don't forget to check out the full articles on the Resource Nexus website, linked in the description. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave us a review. It really helps out. As always, stay curious, and I'll catch you next time.
Cool. Guess we'll see you around.
All right, check you later.
Bye.
Wait, man, why are you always such a dork, man?
What are you talking
Check you
about?
later. Check you later.